spleens.
Got any nuts?
I haven't got any nuts, sorry.
Nuts actually almost certainly would have been on offer in the Colosseum. Archaeologists have found evidence of kind of nuts, dates, things like that.
It may, all right. I love it.
So there was a lot of resistance to Roman rule in this period.
Accent.
When Herod dies, there is a serious uprising that has to be put down by the governor of Syria.
And then there's one in 70 AD.
Then when one of Herod's sons is deposed in 6 AD and replaced with direct Roman rule, there is another rebellion because that involves direct Roman taxation, which the Jews find very hard to stomach, not only because obviously no one enjoys being taxed, but also because this is such a clear indicator that now they are being ruled by the Romans, and there is this belief that obviously the Jews should ultimately be subject to no one but God.
The whole taxation with the Jews is actually quite complicated. It is a very deep topic. I mentioned it a little bit on a separate video. I might actually talk about it a little more on another video once again, because the whole thing with taxation, Romans and Jews is complex.
It's hard to pinpoint sometimes the exact cause of resistance in Judea in this period because a lot of it is probably about Roman rule. There are some points where something, for example, that Pontius Pilate does very directly.
Oh, by the way, see, I like the way she says, because I'm sorry that I'm interrupting her, but I did want to say something about Pontius Pilate. So I'll let her finish and then I'll tell you something.
Leads to resistance. But there is also a socioeconomic element to it, with a sort of fissure between the elites and the non-elites within Judean society itself, particularly as the Judean elites aligned themselves increasingly with Hellenistic and with Roman culture.
So yeah, the idea of Pontius Pilate being a tyrant, it depends. Like we do think that it's very likely. He's a historical figure, by the way, 100%, because there is a stele that mentions him by name from the Roman period in association with the governorship of Judea, which at this time was becoming a sort of a prefecture of the province of Syria, if I am correct. We'll see if she says it, otherwise I'll Google it. But I do think I'm correct. So it wasn't its own thing. And when it comes to his ability to govern, it's true. She did mention it at the beginning and then I forgot to say it. It's true that he's mentioned by some Jewish sources as someone who was really hated by the people, to the point that he was even chastised by the emperor himself for how he was behaving. But then there are other sources that can't counter that. So we don't know. Maybe it was exaggerated a little bit. We don't exactly. We do know that he was trying everything he could to try to keep the people at peace. It's kind of counterintuitive then to think, why would he like disrespect them and put a Roman symbol in a position where he knows that the people are going to be mad about it. So we don't know how much of that we can actually believe. But it is interesting, the figure of Pontius Pilate, totally. Right.
So we're seeing the People's Front of Judea plotting to overthrow Roman rule.
It is entire apparatus of the Roman state.
The thing is, there actually isn't that much apparatus of the Roman imperialist state in Judea at this point. Pontius Pilate is ruling from the new city Caesarea on the coast.
Oh, Caesarea.
But what does that really mean?
Caesarea.
He has a small number of soldiers. He doesn't even have a full garrison. His main role is really dispensing justice. For the majority of crimes, he is the only person who can give out a capital sentence. But apart from that, almost all the administration of Judea is left to the local elites. And this is really the Romans' modus operandi across almost all of their empire. I think it's really key to their imperial success. They let the people govern themselves as much as they possibly can because they know that that is going to create both less work and less problems for them. Well, that's certainly not true, because there has only been a Roman governor in Judea for about 27 years at this point. Before that, the Romans are only involved as being the kind of protectors of the local client kings.
Protectorate.
Pontius Pilate actually did build an aqueduct. He extended it all the way into Jerusalem, and it causes a huge political problem for him. The population are not grateful. In fact, they rebel because it transpires that he has used some of the temple's funds to complete this project.
Yeah, sanitation. They're a bit cockney, aren't they? Hey, you remember what this city used to be like? Yeah. Give me some sanitation.
Roads was probably the first thing that the Romans would do whenever they arrived in a new province, because you need to be able to move your troops around.
Absolutely.
If you find that there is suddenly unrest in one part of your province and the imperial governor can't get to it to put it down, then there's no point having an imperial governor at all. So the building of good, straight, well-maintained roads is completely characteristic of Roman imperial policy. So with things like irrigation and medicine, the thing is that before the Romans arrived, the Jews were not savage barbarians, unlike, say, the Brits were. They had been living in a society that was sandwiched between sometimes rule.
Yeah, I would say even the Celtic populations, I mean, they're savage from the perspective of the Romans, but they did have their own systems, not as organized as the Romans. But yeah, she's really good. We have already reviewed her once. Classes is Honor Cargill Martin, or Cargill. Honor Cargill Martin delves into the iconic, yeah. Very nice. So that's her name, presenter.
Ruled by these great Hellenistic empires. And so they really already had access to parts of Greek culture, Greek learning. Suddenly the elites had already been building homes in Greek style. And so when the Romans arrived, a lot of these elements of what we would see as being civilization would already have been in place. And in terms of education, Judaism is a religion that has always had a huge emphasis on education.
Yeah.
The Judean elites would also have been educated in the Greek language and Greek culture. And so the Romans are not going to view these people as kind of ill-educated, unurbanized savages. I think they had wine before.
Yeah, of course they had wine before. There is the whole turning water into wine, but still it's funny.
I think they had wine before the Romans. The Romans wouldn't really have been doing much to keep order necessarily in the streets of Jerusalem themselves. It's a very small number of soldiers that are stationed there. And so I think the majority of responsibility for keeping order day to day would have continued to fall on local administrators.
This is always going to repeat everything now. I love the scene, the face on this guy. Yeah, and it is true, though, that sometimes policing jobs were done by the legionaries. Her point is correct. But I do want to underline that. You should imagine that in cities, sometimes the Roman legionaries did take care of that. Not just them, you have the vigiles, but I'm saying it does sometimes happen historically.
What I would say is, although there are some issues in terms of how they're characterizing what the Romans are doing in Judea specifically, this scene does really speak to something in wider Roman imperial policy, where they view the bringing of kind of Romanizing or civilizing aspects of life to their provinces as part of their political policy. They believe that if you offer people kind of material comforts and also things like education, what the Romans would view to be high culture, then they're going to be less likely to want to rebel against you. It's perhaps going to both...
I don't know if you guys noticed, but she has a mannerism that makes me think of Disney animation. Is it giving you that? Check the way when she speaks. Check her body language. Look.
They believe that if you offer people kind of material comforts and also things like education, what the Romans would view to be high culture, then they're going to be less likely to want to rebel against you. It's perhaps going to both kind of soften their military instinct and soften their view of the Romans. I don't think my Latin teacher would have let me off this easily.
Write it 100 times. That's exactly what you shouldn't let. Oh, this is genius.